Olivia Marks lived in the small town of Woodhaven, where life was so predictable you could set your clock to the schedules of the neighbors. She was 18 years old, and her life followed a rigid timetable dictated by her mother, Laura Marks. Laura, a therapist at the local hospital, was someone who always appeared composed, confident, but distant. Her love for Olivia, while unquestionable, came with strict boundaries. Control. Every morning, Olivia woke up at 6 after breakfast, always oatmeal with dried fruit. Laura would remind her to take her daily capsule of vitamins. "They're for your health," she would repeat, leaving no room for questions. Olivia took the capsules mechanically, never daring to ask what kind of vitamins they were. Olivia's days were structured around her high school classes, where she avoided drawing attention to herself, and her job at a bookstore, where she shelved books by genre and read during her breaks. At school, she was known as the quiet, diligent student. Her classmates respected her, but none would have called Olivia a close friend. Her mother forbade her from doing many things. "Parties are irresponsible," Laura would say, shutting down Olivia's smallest attempts to carve out some freedom. "Class trips? What if something happens? Sports? Injuries are dangerous for you." Olivia had grown used to obeying, but like any teenager, she couldn't escape the feeling that her life was being shaped not just by concern, but by something more, something invisible that stood between her and the world. The turning point came one evening. Laura was sitting at the kitchen table, her expression more serious than usual. "We need to talk," she said. Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. Her mother never started conversations this way. "You have a genetic condition," Laura said, locking eyes with her daughter. "That's why you take the vitamins, and that's why I've always been so protective of you." Olivia was silent, feeling equal parts anger and confusion. How could her mother keep such an important secret from her for all these years? Suddenly, her entire life, the restrictions, the rules, even the capsules, took on a new meaning. But with that realization came a flood of new questions. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She lay in her room, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what this revelation meant for her. Was her life truly so fragile? Could she trust her mother after such a confession? And above all, if this genetic condition existed, why was she only learning about it now? She began recalling moments from her life that had once seemed strange. Her mother's sharp reactions to any idea involving risk, her constant reminders about health, even the fact that they never discussed her father, who had disappeared when Olivia was 2 years old. Something about the story didn't add up, and it made her think that the secret Laura had revealed was only part of a much larger puzzle. Olivia decided she needed to find out more. But where to start? She knew she could no longer trust her mother. This decision, though painful, marked the first step in her quest to find answers on her own. That night changed everything. Olivia, who had grown used to living by someone else's rules, felt for the first time the need to take control of her own life. What she didn't yet realize was that this inner rebellion would lead her to discoveries that would turn her world upside down. After her mother's revelation, Olivia Marks began to see her surroundings in a completely different light. The familiar rhythm of her life now felt deceptive, suspicious, and worth deeper scrutiny. Every time she walked through the school corridors, she was overwhelmed by a sense that something more was lurking behind the facade of normalcy. At first, her suspicions were vague, but over time, they became increasingly specific. Woodhaven High School had always seemed like a safe place. It was a small, well-organized institution where everyone knew everyone. Classes followed a strict schedule, and the teachers maintained order. But now, after the conversation with her mother, Olivia began noticing small details that had previously seemed insignificant. She observed people more closely, particularly the teachers, and started picking up on moments that had once escaped her attention. Her focus soon landed on Mr. Brown, the physical education teacher. He was one of those people the students both liked and feared. Known for his charisma, Mr. Brown had a way of easily connecting with students, but his behavior sometimes pushed the limits of professionalism. He often displayed warm gestures toward the students, gestures that now struck Olivia as unnatural. Another figure who caught her attention was Ms. Sanders, the drama club advisor. Young and talented, Ms. Sanders was popular among students, particularly the seniors. She frequently stayed late after school for extra rehearsals. Olivia noticed that Ms. Sanders seemed to favor certain boys, giving them more attention than other club members. Her interactions with one senior, Ethan Grace, appeared particularly close. But the person who raised the most questions for Olivia was the school principal, Dr. Richardson. A man in his mid-50s, always impeccably dressed in pressed suits, he had an unblemished reputation. He was polite and seemed to be universally trusted by students and parents alike. Yet his demeanor now seemed staged. Rumors circulated that Richardson often called individual female students into his office for long conversations. The students gossiped about it during breaks, but no one dared to confront him directly. Olivia's perception of school began to shift entirely. She spent more time analyzing the behavior of those around her than focusing on her studies. Her suspicions grew as she noticed patterns in the teacher's actions. For example, Mr. Brown always found excuses for accidental physical contact during exercises. Ms. Sanders praised certain students while ignoring others, often zeroing in on specific boys. Dr. Richardson, though outwardly professional, devoted far too much attention to certain female students, raising questions about what crossed the line of propriety. Olivia started recording her observations in a small notebook. She didn't know if she would ever use the information, but it felt important to document it. She acted with caution, ensuring that no one realized what she was doing. Whenever someone approached her in the hall or started a conversation, she quickly tucked the notebook into her backpack and tried to act natural. Gradually, her relationship with school was forever altered. What had once seemed ordinary and even dull now appeared to be a battleground of hidden intrigues. Olivia realized she couldn't trust even those who seemed the most reliable. This marked the beginning of her personal investigation, an undertaking that would forever change her life. Olivia Marks decided to take action. Her suspicions about the school and certain teachers had grown too strong to ignore. She felt that something far more serious was hidden behind the facade of the school's routine, and she was determined to uncover the truth. The investigation she began required careful planning and discretion. Her first target was Mr. Brown, the physical education teacher. Olivia signed up for his after-school training sessions, held twice a week in the school gym. Her goal was to observe his behavior and gather evidence if anything seemed suspicious. She noticed that Mr. Brown often sought out opportunities to interact with female students, disguising his behavior as part of the training process. His adjustments of students' movements during exercises felt like more than just concern for proper technique. To dig deeper, Olivia decided to use a hidden recording device she had found among her late father's belongings in the garage. She discreetly placed the recorder in the locker room during one of the training sessions, hoping to capture any questionable conversations. It was a risky move. If Mr. Brown discovered the device, she wouldn't be able to explain its presence. Her next focus was Miss Sanders. To get closer to her, Olivia joined the drama club. She managed to secure a role as an assistant during rehearsals, giving her more opportunities to observe Miss Sanders' behavior. Olivia quickly noticed how the teacher gravitated toward one student in particular, Ethan Grace. Ms. Sanders seemed to give him special attention, far beyond what was appropriate. Olivia began to keep a close eye on them, especially on the evenings when rehearsals stretched late. One evening, she discreetly took several photos when she saw Ms. Sanders and Ethan leaving the school building together. Their interaction seemed far too familiar for a teacher and a student. Olivia decided to keep the photos as potential evidence, saving them in a hidden folder on her phone. The school principal, Dr. Richardson, remained the most enigmatic figure. He was cautious, composed, and appeared to do nothing suspicious on the surface. Olivia realized she needed a different strategy to gather information about him. She began documenting who entered his office and how long they stayed. One day, she noticed that several female students from a parallel class spent an unusually long time in his office, far beyond what a normal conversation would require. Her notebook became her primary tool. She carefully recorded even the smallest details, the time, place, and behavior of both teachers and students. But Olivia also understood that her notes alone wouldn't be enough to prove anything. She needed concrete recordings, photographs, or first-hand accounts to support her suspicions. To avoid drawing attention to herself, Olivia maintained her usual routine. She diligently completed her homework, continued working at the bookstore, and made an effort not to stand out. Still, the pressure of her secret investigation began to weigh on her. She often felt tense, fearing that someone might discover what she was doing. What troubled her most was the absence of anyone she could confide in. Her mother, who seemed to control every aspect of her life, was the last person she could turn to. Olivia knew that her actions went against the rules, but she believed that exposing the truth was more important than anything else. Her investigation progressed slowly but steadily. Each new day brought new discoveries and details that added to the bigger picture. Olivia began to realize that the path she was on might put her in danger. But she wasn't about to stop. What she had uncovered so far only strengthened her resolve to see it through to the end. Olivia Mark's investigation was gradually gaining momentum, but at the same time, it was becoming increasingly complicated. She began to sense that someone might be watching her. This fear wasn't unfounded. The more information she gathered, the more attention she seemed to attract, even if she didn't realize it at first. One evening, as Olivia finished her shift at the bookstore, she noticed that she had left her notebook on the counter. Her heart froze when she saw the cover slightly out of place, as though someone had flipped through it. The notebook contained all her records, suspicions, observations, and even the photos she had saved as potential evidence. She quickly grabbed it and checked its contents. Nothing appeared to be missing, but this moment became her first real warning that she might not be as invisible as she thought. This happened just as things at school began to change. Mr. Brown, who had always been actively involved in training sessions, abruptly canceled several practices. The students joked that he must have fallen sick or gone on vacation, but Olivia suspected it might be related to her actions. She didn't know if the recorder she had left in the locker room had captured anything, but the possibility that Mr. Brown had somehow discovered her investigation made her uneasy. Ms. Sanders, meanwhile, was acting even more peculiar. She began avoiding the students she had previously favored, canceling several drama club rehearsals without explanation. Ethan Grace, the senior student Olivia had suspected of having a close relationship with Sanders, also seemed withdrawn and troubled. Olivia couldn't determine whether it was just a coincidence or if her actions were starting to ripple outward. Dr. Richardson, the principal, remained as enigmatic as ever. However, Olivia noticed changes in his behavior too. He appeared less frequently in the hallways and spent most of his time in his office, where the door was always shut. Olivia understood that observing him required even greater caution. One careless move could jeopardize not just her investigation, but also her personal safety. To protect herself, Olivia decided to anonymously share some of her findings with Thomas Kane, a journalist for the local newspaper. Kane was known for his investigative reporting on abuse of power and misconduct in public institutions. She prepared an anonymous package containing copies of her notes and photos. In a letter, she requested that he not reveal the source of the information. Delivering the package proved more challenging than she had anticipated. Olivia decided to leave it in the mailbox of the newspaper's office early in the morning when the streets were empty. She avoided security cameras and constantly looked over her shoulder, worried that every step she took might be watched. In the days that followed, she lived in a state of constant anxiety. At the same time, tension at school began to escalate. Students started whispering rumors that something strange was going on within the school. Some hinted at potential scandals involving the teachers, but no one knew anything for certain. The biggest shock came one evening when Olivia felt she was being followed as she walked home. Her pulse quickened and she adjusted her pace, taking unexpected turns and detours down side streets. She hoped to lose whoever was behind her. When she finally reached her house, she locked the door and bolted it. Her heart pounded in her chest. This incident confirmed her worst fears. Someone had discovered her investigation. Olivia realized she was in danger. Yet she also understood that she had gone too far to turn back now. The only option was to keep moving forward, hoping the truth she sought was worth the risk she was taking. Several days had passed since Olivia Marks anonymously sent her materials to journalist Thomas Kane. She didn't know if he had received the package, and each new day filled her with apprehension. At school, she constantly looked over her shoulder trying to gauge if anyone suspected her actions. The pressure was mounting, but despite her fear, Olivia remained convinced that she had done the right thing. On Monday morning, unexpected news broke. The local newspaper published an article by Thomas Kane that detailed disturbing issues tied to Woodhaven High School. The piece described suspicious behavior by certain teachers, particularly Mr. Brown and Ms. Sanders. While their names weren't mentioned explicitly, The details painted a clear enough picture that the students and staff could easily identify them. Mr. Brown, who had seemed increasingly tense in recent weeks, abruptly took a leave of absence. The announcement came through an internal staff memo, but it quickly made its way to the students. Rumors spread through the hallways that he had simply disappeared and wasn't planning to return. While the official reason for his absence wasn't disclosed, it was clear to everyone that it was connected to the article. Ms. Sanders also began acting differently. She stopped attending drama club rehearsals, leaving the students to manage their preparations on their own. Her behavior was nervous and erratic, and she avoided interactions with students as much as possible. On several occasions, she even left the school during lunch breaks, which was entirely out of character for her. The unfolding events sent waves of panic through the school. Students were abuzz with speculation about who might have provided the journalist with the information. It seemed like no one felt safe, as even an offhand comment could spark suspicion. Some senior students openly suggested that it must have been one of their classmates who had betrayed the teachers. Olivia tried to remain inconspicuous. She avoided extracurricular activities and steered clear of conversations that might lead anyone to connect her to the article. At the same time, the ongoing developments at school confirmed the seriousness of the issues she had been trying to expose. A few days later, Thomas Kane reached out to her through the anonymous, secure channel she had provided in the package. His message was brief but reassuring. He thanked her for the information and assured her that he would continue investigating the matter. While this gave Olivia a momentary sense of relief, it also reminded her that her mission was far from over. Not all the news was comforting. The school administration launched its own internal investigation. Principal Richardson initiated a series of private meetings with teachers, seemingly trying to uncover the source of the information leak. He appeared more stressed and less composed than usual, a stark contrast to the confident leader the students were used to seeing. His actions seemed focused less on resolving the issues and more on protecting himself and the school's reputation. The tension escalated when Ethan Grace, the senior student Olivia had been observing in connection with Ms. Sanders, approached her directly. He seemed agitated and asked her outright if she knew anything about the article. Olivia, trying to maintain her composure, denied any involvement, but the suspicious look in his eyes left her shaken. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. Her decision to reveal the truth was starting to yield results, but it also came with significant risks. She felt trapped. She could either continue to keep her involvement hidden or take further steps to expose the full truth, regardless of the danger. The article by Thomas Kane was only the first step. The events at school were spiraling out of control, and Olivia realized that she had set off a chain reaction that couldn't be stopped. Her actions had sparked a reckoning, and she was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The following days brought events to Woodhaven High School that no one could have anticipated. The tension that had been building since the article's publication reached a breaking point. The administration, teachers, and students all lived in a state of constant anxiety, which only intensified with the shocking development that soon followed. Mr. Brown was found in the school gym early one morning, and the circumstances were deeply unsettling. The police launched an investigation, uncovering suspicious details surrounding the incident. News of this quickly spread to local media, creating even greater turmoil. For the school, this was a devastating blow. Students and staff alike speculated about what had happened. Some believed Mr. Brown couldn't handle the pressure following the revelations in the newspaper article. Others floated darker theories, suggesting that his death might be connected to someone trying to conceal even greater secrets. For Olivia, the news was a horrifying and unexpected twist in her investigation. The police began questioning students and staff, hoping to piece together the events leading to Mr. Brown's death. Olivia knew her notes could potentially play a crucial role in the investigation, but she also understood that they would reveal her as the source of the information that sparked the article. She wrestled with whether to come forward and risk exposure or to remain silent. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at school became even more strained. Teachers looked nervous, and some began taking sick leave to avoid being questioned by the police. Ms. Sanders, who had already been acting strangely, stopped showing up at all. Ethan Grace, the senior student Olivia suspected of being close to Ms. Sanders, seemed more withdrawn than ever and avoided speaking to anyone. Olivia realized the situation had spiraled out of her control. What began as a personal investigation to uncover the truth was now a chaotic storm engulfing everyone around her. Each day at school was a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. At the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. One afternoon, as Olivia returned home, she saw a police car parked outside her house. Her heart raced as she watched two officers exit the vehicle and approach the front door. They wanted to speak with her mother, Laura Marks. The officers asked if Olivia had noticed anything unusual at school or if she knew anything about recent events. Laura, composed but concerned, later confronted Olivia with a stern tone, demanding to know if she was involved in any way. Olivia denied everything, but her nervous demeanor betrayed her inner turmoil. Despite her fear, Olivia couldn't ignore her sense of responsibility for what had happened. She decided to review all her notes to see if she had missed any clues that could shed light on Mr. Brown's death. While her records contained detailed observations, there was nothing that directly pointed to what might have led to his tragic end. At the same time, new rumors began circulating through the school. Students claimed they had seen Principal Richardson destroying documents in the school archives late at night. Others speculated that he was hiding information that could expose a broader network of misconduct. These rumors only deepened Olivia's suspicions about the principal, even as she realized that investigating him further would be even more dangerous now. This was a point of no return for Olivia. Mr. Brown's death had changed everything. Her resolve to uncover the truth now clashed with her fear for her own safety. She knew continuing her investigation could lead to even greater risks, but stopping was no longer an option. The death of Mr. Brown triggered profound changes at Woodhaven High School. The incident sent shockwaves through the school community, plunging teachers and students alike into a state of panic. The police intensified their investigation, while local journalists hovered around the school, hungry for new details. At the same time, a growing atmosphere of distrust began to fracture the school community, exposing hidden issues that had been buried for years. Principal Richardson, once seen as an unshakable leader, was now under immense pressure. Since the publication of Thomas Kane's article, the police interrogations, and Mr. Brown's death, he had been losing control of the situation. He seemed to be doing everything he could to prevent any further public scandals, but his actions only worsened the chaos. Students noticed that Richardson was spending a lot of time in the school archives, and one night some even claimed to have seen him leaving the building with a large black bag. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the principal was destroying compromising documents tied to his own misconduct. Others speculated that he was covering up evidence of a larger network of abuses at the school. Whatever the case, his behavior only raised more questions. Meanwhile, Ms. Sanders disappeared entirely. None of the drama club students could explain why she had stopped coming to rehearsals. A teacher let slip that she had taken a leave of absence, but among the students, the prevailing belief was that she had left town. Some claimed to have seen Ethan Grace talking to her outside the school shortly before she vanished. This only fueled Olivia's suspicions. At the same time, Olivia herself became a subject of curiosity. Her classmates began to notice her withdrawn and tense behavior. Friends who once casually spoke with her now avoided her, sensing something different about her demeanor. The students openly discussed who might have been the source of the journalist's information, and although no one directly accused Olivia, she overheard her name mentioned in connection to the article more than once. The pressure on Olivia was relentless. She knew her actions had ignited a storm, but she also couldn't abandon her investigation. Every night she pored over her notes, searching for anything that could help the police or explain what was happening at the school. But instead of finding answers, she only uncovered more questions. Then a new spark reignited her determination. Thomas Kane published a second article, which explicitly hinted at Principal Richardson's involvement in misconduct. The article described instances where certain female students spent excessive amounts of time in his office and raised questions about potential abuse of power. While no names were mentioned, the descriptions were specific enough that many could guess who was being referenced. The second article pushed the school into complete disarray. Teachers began resigning, and parents demanded that Richardson be removed from his position. The police conducted a search of the principal's office and confiscated several boxes of documents. Olivia watched this unfold from a classroom window, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Journalists swarmed the school, seeking comments from students and staff. Olivia noticed cameras pointed in her direction a few times, but avoided engaging with anyone. She understood that if her involvement in the investigation were revealed, it would jeopardize not only her education but her future as well. The situation at the school deteriorated rapidly. Richardson was officially suspended, and the local school board initiated the process of his dismissal. Miss Sanders resigned without providing any explanation. Woodhaven High School, once a symbol of stability for the community, had become a center of scandal and controversy. Olivia felt increasingly isolated. She realized that her fight for the truth had dismantled the very system she had sought to expose. But the fallout went beyond the school. She had lost the trust of her peers and any sense of normalcy in her life. The weight of her choices was beginning to crush her. The truth she had revealed had exposed abuses and possibly prevented future harm, but it had also come at a staggering personal cost. Still, Olivia knew there was no turning back. She had started something she could no longer stop, and she could only hope it would lead to something better in the end. With Woodhaven High School's reputation in ruins, Olivia Marks found herself on the brink of complete exhaustion. What had started as a quest for the truth had resulted in the collapse of not just the system she had sought to expose, but also parts of her own life. The death of Mr. Brown, the resignation of Ms. Sanders, and the suspension of Principal Richardson were only the tip of the iceberg. The consequences of her actions now felt irreversible. Following Richardson's suspension, the police continued to review the documents seized from his office. These materials confirmed some of the allegations referenced in Thomas Kane's articles. Lists of students who had frequently visited the principal's office, evidence of financial irregularities, and other suspicious activity. The school board announced that Woodhaven High would be closed indefinitely for a full investigation. Students were to be temporarily transferred to schools in neighboring towns. Olivia realized that her actions had made an undeniable impact, an impact she hadn't anticipated. But this realization brought her no comfort. The school she had known her entire life was gone. She had lost friends and the trust of those around her. Her classmates avoided her, and her mother, Laura, while still unaware of the full truth, had begun to sense that something was wrong. Laura Marks, always the composed and authoritative figure in Olivia's life, now seemed lost. She noticed her daughter becoming more withdrawn and anxious and grew increasingly concerned. One evening, Laura suggested that they leave Woodhaven entirely and start fresh in a new town. Olivia remained silent for a long time, but eventually realized that this might be her only chance to escape the shadows of what had happened. Before leaving, Olivia made the difficult decision to destroy all of her records. The notebook that had been both her source of strength and a constant source of fear was burned in the fireplace at their home. She kept only the recorder she had used to gather evidence, hiding it away in a place no one would find. Destroying the notes was painful, but Olivia knew it was necessary to leave her past behind. The day of their departure came quickly. Olivia boarded a train with her mother, leaving Woodhaven and everything it represented behind. She stared out the window, watching the familiar landscape fade into the distance. Her mind swirled with thoughts about whether she had made the right choices. Her investigation had exposed abuses and possibly saved others from harm, but it had also cost her her stability, her trust in others, and her school. Olivia understood that the price of truth had been far higher than she'd expected. While she had wanted to help, her methods had left her isolated. She didn't know what awaited her in the future, but she was certain she would have to carry the weight of what had happened for the rest of her life. In the new town, Laura planned to start over, taking a job at a local hospital, while Olivia prepared to attend a new school. No one there knew her, giving her a chance to leave the past behind. But even in the unfamiliar environment, Olivia found it impossible to completely forget what had happened. She often wondered whether she would make the same decisions if she could go back. Was it worth uncovering the truth at such a great cost? Was she prepared to face new challenges in her life? These questions lingered, their answers unclear. As the train sped further away from Woodhaven, Olivia looked toward the horizon of the new city ahead. She thought about the opportunity to start anew, to rewrite her story. Yet deep down, she knew that the past would always remain a part of her, no matter how far she traveled.